the central part, the starting point for our 15-minute city. Then the historical formation analysis, the VP4, the relations with mobility and green-blue networks, and finally in VP5 we arrived to the macro scale, trying to design and model our 15-minute city. Our contribution is part of the VP2, but since our model, as I was saying, is a data-driven model to identify urban preconditions for densification, in particular within our contribution, we are studying, we are trying to assess how can we rely on data in doing these models. Data, we know, are needed to analyze existing urban configuration and existing functions, design and assess new development scenarios, and evaluate practical feasibility and the impact of urban interventions and policies. So the question that we asked ourselves was, are big data reliable? Since we are working in such different contexts, we needed data, horizontal data that we can use in the different contexts. So the point was, can we trust this data? And at least, do we know the limitations that they have in a deep sense? And so this was the leading question: can big data be used as informative strata for decision support systems? And for this, we brought these two contributions. The first one is the one that you're here presenting. So how data characteristics and specificities influence the modeling of service accessibility in the context of 15-minute city was the first question. The second one was focused instead on so here we have a comparison between OpenStreetMap and Google Maps. In the following session, in this room, we are presenting this comparison instead between OpenStreetMap and real data. And so there we are asking ourselves, how reliable are open data, in particular OpenStreetMap, in informing urban modeling? So now we are here, and we know the importance of big data, the opportunities and challenges that are underneath them. And this is the specific aim of this paper, so a preliminary exploration of the suitability of OpenStreetMap and Google Maps for informing 15-minute city modeling under these three main aspects. So the quantity of data, the categorization aspect, and the spatial distribution. So this is the overview of the presentation. Now Chiara will go into detail in our contribution.
Thank you, Federico. So the dataset we are analyzing are OpenStreetMap and Google Maps. And as all we know, OpenStreetMap is a volunteer geographic information based on crowdsourcing. So it is an open data that allows free download and upload of data. Instead, Google Maps is a geographic internet service based both on crowdsourcing and proprietary databases. So this is not completely open data. But we don't focus a lot on this information because it's more interesting to see their application on the case studies. So starting from the case studies, these are the four pilot areas in the partners of the DUT project, and there are some features in common. In particular, Nice and Vienne and Versilia are two conurbations, one with high density and the other with medium to low density. While Vienne and Gothenburg are two radiocentric cities, again, one with high density and the other with medium to low density. So the methodology includes a few preliminary steps and then a core analysis. But first of all, we need, in order to compare the two databases, we need a common language and a shared categorization between the two databases. But in the literature, there's not a universally accepted classification of urban places. And the one provided by Moreno is rather generic for our purpose. So we relied on a categorization proposed by Papadopoulos et al. In 2023, which brings together groups of urban amenities commonly used in studies on 15-minute city. Sorry. We used these. We choose these 7 categories that you can see in this table. Next, so the activities selected based on the previous categorization were downloaded from the two databases. For OpenStreetMap, we used the QuickOSM plugin within the QGIS software. While for Google Maps, we used the QGIS Python console with thrown an API, the API places, with a nearby search request that needs a central point coordinates and metric radius value to define a buffer area. So for the core analysis is made up of two parts, a quantitative and a qualitative assessment based on the number, so the amount and the location of the entries, and another assessment based on the categorization of those entries. Both these two analyses was carried out both at urban and local scales to provide a general overview as well as an insight of the local level implication. So this is the first part of the results. At the global scale, we observed a clear difference in the number and the spatial distribution of the entries between the two databases. In blue, you can see the OpenStreetMap value, and in yellow the Google Maps value. And the mismatch between the two databases is measured using the relative percent difference that show us the gap. The gap between the two databases, but it don't tell us which is actually the greatest. Looking at the value, we notice that OpenStreetMap shows a much higher number of entries compared to Google Maps, and the biggest difference is between Nice and Vienne, and we can think that it's due to the high density of these two cities. But if we looked in the at the values of the attribute tables, we find that in these two cases, OpenStreetMap includes a lot of private swimming pools, which heavily inflates the total. So we can say that as a first preliminary result that there are key distinction in data construction logic, because OpenStreetMap registers all physically existing structures, both public and private, based on their spatial footprint, regardless of their relevance as public amenities. Instead, Google Maps prioritizes commercial and publicly accessible point of interest. So what does this mean for the local study of the 15-minute city? Looking at the 15 minutes isochron in a suburban area of Gothenburg, we can see that OpenStreetMap shows a more scattered distribution of activities across the whole area, while Google Maps seems to concentrate on the main road. So, and also from a typological perspective, we can see that Google Maps has lower values, and the point of interest seems to be mostly commercial. So the retail, service, and trade voice. Instead, OpenStreetMap report high values of restaurant, retail, service, and trade, and sport facilities as well. So, as a second preliminary result, we can say that the choice of one database over another can significantly influence neighborhood level urban analysis, because numerical discrepancies and typological differences substantially impact the interpretative assumption related to urban activity, liveliness, and functional character of the neighborhood. Then now we are in the second part of the results, and in this part we want to go deep into the difference between the two data sets with a market-based comparison. And we chose these three markers of urban amenity: cinemas, bookstores, and bars. And two cases, the opposite trends emerge compared to the overall distribution of the amenities we we have seen before, because for these 3 markers, OpenStreetMap tends to underrepresent specific categories compared with Google Maps, with the exception of the Versilian case of the bar, in which OpenStreetMap has a higher value. So to see this phenomenon in numbers, we used a modified version of the relative percentage difference that show us also negative values when Google Maps returns more data than OpenStreetMap, as you can see in the first table. Unfortunately, we don't have time to enter in the limitation issues or error issues, but we can say that briefly, the third preliminary result is that there are also distinction in data retrieval logic, not also in data construction, as we've seen before. Because Google Maps impose retrieval limits and depend on the spatial scale, while OpenStreetMap is not constrained by platform or area extent. So at every scale, there are some issues that can be limitation or semantic inconsistencies between the query input and the database response. Finally, there is another issues regarding the semantic ambiguity due to the local cultures and linguistic variation that can influence how amenities are tagged in the data platform. So, for example, you can see in the first table that the interpretation of the marker bar can include more entries that culturally or functionally may fall into this category. And in the second table, you can see how these affect the number of the retrieved features. For example, in the case of Versilia, the bar plus interpretation in this interpretation, OpenStreetMap doesn't even double the value, while Google Maps has tripled his value. So these also affect the gap between the two databases. Okay, so the last preliminary result is that the understanding data semantics and classification granularity become foundational when selecting the data set for urban modeling purpose. Because considering one database over another can change how we perceived which neighborhoods are or can be a 15-minute city. So concluding, to resum the preliminary results, we noticed that there are distinction in data construction logic between the two databases, but also in data retrieval logic. So the choice of the database significantly impacted the interpretative assumption related to urban analysis, both from a quantitative and a functional typological perspective. The conclusion for this contribution are that first, it's essential to understand the intrinsic structure of the logic of the databases. Second, it is not possible to use big data without careful evaluation according to the specific research purpose. And finally, ground truth validation is essential and cannot be overlooked. And on this topic, please follow the next section with my colleague contribution. And to conclude, as further developments, we produced 2 additional contributions. One on the left explores the issues that undermine data reliability, while the other on the right compares different databases with real-world data in order to assess the actual reliability, like what you will see in the next presentation of my colleague. So it's finished. Thank you.
Is there any question to Chiara or Federico?
Okay.
It was a very interesting presentation. I wonder if this didn't happen before, so what you've done here. But I wanted to ask,
Federico,
did you see any differences in the temporal accuracy, so that these two maps, they have maybe places listed that are closed or are gone.
Sorry, I didn't hear because there was noise.
Yeah, so did you also see some differences in Google Maps and OpenStreetMap in terms of the places that have been gone, so that are closed, but they are still listed on these platforms?
Ah, okay.
No, the point, I mean, then we are focusing on this aspect for the OpenStreetMap thing on the contribution of Federica, but there are differences in these backend logs. I mean, there are, I don't remember actually if it was Google Maps or OpenStreetMap, but there are problems in the datasets, in particular in OpenStreetMap, because we have a lot of backend logs, because it's an update made by the users without supervision. So we have activities that are still in place, but that are no more there. So we have a lot of overlapping of points, but with different functions. And the point is actually that we cannot use this data to assess, to create MC score, meaning city scores, because it's going to be fake for our purpose, both in terms of categorization and in numbers. So yes, we noticed that, and we noticed in particular in the second journal contribution that we are here presenting. I don't know if you want to add something.
No, for this is important to have a ground truth validation because the database not always follows the changes in the actual cities. So they are not as fast as the changes in the cities. So maybe there are.
I mean, the point is that we cannot have a ground truth validation of all our cities or all the cases that we are studying, but at least understand very deeply the logic and the way they are mapped in different contexts too, because we are facing different realities within this project, and there are differences among these cases is quite important. So how can we rely on data is actually a question that wasn't in the beginning of our research, but we decided to go into that to have a sort of evaluation of the accuracy.
We are discussing also within the project to compare, at least for NIS, datasets with the official dataset, the local number of covers. The problem that having worked with the local number of covers for years, even the dataset is not good. So it's, as you say, there's no ground truth that we can take as a granted as real.
It's a topic I think.
Otherwise, you have to go there like we do inserts.
Yes. I mean, if we really need this data and we need them, we have to have someone that is checking and verifying them somehow. I don't know if we have to take this effort to do this effort as universities, or if there are some official institutions do that. But we need reliable data. And actually, especially in some contexts, now we will see later in the Versita case study that is particularly weak, let's say. So that's it, I think. Okay.
There is an error. I'm sorry to underline it because the data is not the same.
Thank you.
No.
Scusa, non state condividendo, no, è scritto in computer lì, quindi condividi. Sì.
Non è stato condiviso?
Selezione. Qual è la prossima?
Yeah. It is my presentation, which is the second presentation today, and it faces another of the many challenges that we are facing in our DUT project, and it has something to deal with the notion of weak ties that I'm going to discuss here. And of course, the notion of 50 minutes is, of course, it does not deserve any presentation. From the moment it was introduced during the pandemic, it has gained a wide interest all over the world, and the discussion broke out of the academic circles and the community, our community, and sparked interest in the media and also in the public debate, so as to gain strong supporters all over the world. And we are not talking about it. I think that we don't need to underline the strong support that it has gained all over the world, the idea of walkable or small walkable settlements, but also some vocal critics around the notion and the idea of a proximity city, of a 15-minute city. And these vocal critics, among the vocal critics that we have registered, one of the most important, most relevant, because the question of its isolation. That is, the question that the creation of walkable settlements, which are functionally autonomous from the rest of the city, could lead to inherently segregative effects. The so-called 50 minutes islands, or someone has called them 50 minutes bubbles, are at risk of being compartmentalized and isolated urban areas where the interactions and relationships closely occur only within the single neighborhood, with inherent risks of ghettoization or opposite risks of gentrification. In other words, something like that. And one of the most important voices among the critics, Edward Blazers, wrote that living in a proximity city might entail being citizens of a sort of small neighborhood rather than citizens of an entire metropolis that feels deeply dangerous to me. Of course, Edward Glaser is talking and writing from the US, where the question of ghettoization is very crucial question. And he also wrote that if you want a city that's integrated, you have to eschew the 15-minute cities, and also all cities should be archipelagos of neighborhoods, but these neighborhoods must be connected. That is a very central question. That is the risk that these 50 minutes become 50 minutes islands. These risks to be avoided suggested to shift the discussion from the intrinsic features of the urban area designated for pedestrian use, to the morphological features or functional features and so on, to the question of its positioning within the overall system. So as to ensure that the global network of interactions and movement is properly connected and integrated with a broader set of relationships at a global scale, in order to transform those 50 minutes island into something different. We have to say that so far most of the urban studies on the subject focuses on the strong ties within this system. That is, connections and integration and accessibility, centrality, and the idea that we have going on is to stress the importance of the ties whose strategic relevance derives from their capacity to work as bridges between the several parts of the system. That is, in order to transform the so-called islands into bridges. Let's understand what we are talking about. I do hope you are somehow into movies, and the global movie community is made of several local or not so local communities. And I think that most likely you have not ever heard of these guys, Anu Packer, Amy Spiller, Jeff Correa, Don Quigley, and so on. But still they are among the most important persons in the whole cinema movie community. The film communities, I've listed just 9 of them, but there are many more than these. But there are erotic movies, Bollywood, Italian comedy, Western drama, forest horror, romance, music, and comics. And they're all inward-looking communities, very much closed into themselves, with with some actor who works as the main pivot of the single subsystem. And let's say that Robert De Niro has more than 5,000 co-starring actors with it. Let's say it's a very strong pivot within his community. There's a drama, and so for example, or Alberto Sordi, or Frank Sinatra, and so on. But you have to see that this pretty unknown Anu Packer co-starred with Robert De Niro and with Brahma Buddha, and still co-starred with Robert De Niro and they remember her name. Jeff Corey co-starred with John Wayne and Robert De Niro, and so on. We may go on. The Ripley, and then Jerry Orbach, and then Nemo Polly, and finally also Julian Reintut. And so we have to say that in facing this question, please forget about Robert De Niro, forget about John Wayne and the other big names of the cinema movie. These are the very backbone of the cinema system all over the world. And in cities, things are quite the same. We are going to deal with these guys and see these questions. And so we are looking for just these elements within the system. Oh, the matter of weak ties and the matter of bridges has not been introduced within the spatial analysis studies. It comes from the social studies. It comes from some 50 years ago when Mark Granowitz presented a paper, The Strength of Weak Ties, and he named the weak ties within a social network as ties between individuals that know each other but not so well, not really friends, but just acquaintances. Mm-hmm. And the thesis of Granowitz, the famous thesis of Granowitz, is that a weak tie plays a fundamental role in favoring the global functioning of the social system and the overall cohesion of communities, because these weak ties connect different local communities internally, strongly connected. At the global scale, if I remove a weak tie, I deprive the network of the relationships between the communities, and at the local scale, strong ties are far less useful than weak ties because they are sources of novel information between individuals and groups. This is the idea that was introduced by Granowitz, which said that if you look for a job, promote a service when dealing with spreading ideas of organizing political action, weak ties are indispensable to individuals' opportunities and to their integration into communities. Don't talk about the matter of contagion. Of course, as many kinds of contagion occurred through social contact, weak ties are a fundamental bridge for their spread. Of course, and so we are talking of novel information, but also ideas, emotions, social movements, avant-garde fashions, viruses. What gained a wide interest during the pandemic due to the matter of preventing the diffusion of COVID. When we go to spatialize this idea, we have to change some original notion, because the strength of spatial relationships of an element can only depend on the richness of connection and accessibility. And spatial element will be said strongly tied when locally directly connected to many elements and closely linked to the others locally and all over the system. And so here I present a graph, and here I point out the strong ties, which are the most connected and the most integrated globally and locally. Spatial element could here be said to be strongly tied to be a local hub when very strongly connected, and a global terminal if is strongly integrated. The vision of granometers and the idea of weak ties is based on the capacity of weak ties to relate different groups and individually, and so these ideas seems to match the concept of structural whole, which was introduced by Roland Barthes in 1992. And Roland Barthes defines the structural wholes as a sort of empty space within a network. And Barthes conceptualizes the separation between non-redundant contacts, highlighting the opportunities this separation provides. And the famous quote by Roland Barthes is that people who stand near the whole in a social structure are at higher risk of having good ideas, and so suggesting to see bridges where others see hole. To be near a hole is a prominent location within a grid. When searching for weak ties, two essential configuration features must be assumed as clues, that is, high values of choice and high values of bridge degree. These two elements can help us in detecting the position of these bridging ties or weak ties into a grid. I present their application on two small case studies in Tuscany, in southern Tuscany, Massa Marittima and Orbetello. Oh, it's difficult to see this slide. This what?
Switch off the light and we don't see that.
Oh, thank you. It took me this way.
Now we can see you again.
Okay. This the distribution of choice values, and this is the representation of choice values with the dimension of the nodes and integration with the color from hot colors to cool colors, and the positions of the bridge degree, so as to highlight the positions of the so-called weak ties. In the system. Yes, much better. The capacity of weak tie to bridge different communities, suggests the way for detecting the community. Michel Gibbon and Mark Newman, in the first year of the new century, introduced an algorithm referred to social and biological networks, and the idea was to progressively remove the edges we have between us, and so to break the system into smaller components which correspond to its internal community. See, if I have this kind of graph, I select this edge, then I remove, I find out these two edges, I remove, then I detect the different communities all over the system. And something similar can be addressed to spatial networks. And it is Venice, of course, you can recognize it. This is the distribution of choice values. Just a moment, excuse me. And this is the distribution of choice value in the segment map of Venice. And I can highlight the three main weak ties within Venice, characterized with high values of bridge degree, and then I remove them progressively. First, I move this one, they get red. Then I remove the Ponte di Rialto and get this last, the Ponte d'Accademia. And finally, I remove it and I obtain the two different communities of Venice.
Sorry.
In order to detect the weak ties, we have been working on an analytical metric, an analytical measure, which is based on the Kemeny constant. And if we have a graph composed by the set of vertices and edges, and edges symmetrics of the network, we can define a Kemeny constant. And the Kemeny constant gives a global measure of the non-connectivity of the network. In that, K small values correspond to highly connected networks, and K large values correspond to poor mean connectivity. The idea is that is to consider the variation of the Kemeny constant when an edge is removed from a graph. And so the Kemeny-based centrality index reproduces the change in K obtained by removing the change E. In other words, this metric provides a measure of the importance of each edge with respect to the connectivity of the system. It can also be applied so as to deal also with cut edges and disconnected graphs. Going back to the marker of 15 minutes, the role of a weak tie reflects the potential of the spatial element to effectively foster the growth of the vital and well-connected settlement. The main street that Federico was talking of before. And its richness is likely to ensure the neighborhood a significant share of free movement and close connection to its other parts due to the strategic pivot role in path distribution. All these has to be assumed as a precondition, leaving aside, of course, the other several aspects referred to the other features that has to be met. That means morphology and function and many other features. This was applied into our DU2 project, assuming as a case study the Versidian perturbation and the application of the Kemeny-based centrality measure allowed it to point out the element that can be assumed as main street of our settlement, and we have then been working on these elements that are potential routes for the growth of the really workable and vibrant suburban settlements. Some conclusion. Specific morphological and parametric features are not in themselves sufficient to guarantee the successful outcome of the settlement and the functioning as a lovely, livable, and well-integrated proximity city in a suburban area. It may become, there is a risk that it become an isolated, compartmentalized enclave disconnected from other parts of the settlement, ghettoization and gentrification on the other side. To avoid this risk, some preconditions regarding its location and the way to be met, and in particular the presence of dense movement through movement flows, a strong connections to the broader settlement grid. That is, aspects that are ensured when it is anchored around a bridging tie to the global system. This tie, even if deprived of global and local integration and connectivity, they serve the crucial function of bridging the structural whole within the system so as to bind together all its single parts. And I think it's all. I thank you for your attention. Oh, this is a very famous quote by Rothbard, to see bridge. It is an invite to see bridge where other see holes. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
Alenka Hoffman, Iowa State University.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by what you presented. Reminded of living in Vienna, where Vienna has been elected as the city with a high quality of life for the last 11 years or so, adopting what they call polycentric system, where it's kind of living in the 15-minute city, but it has the idea is of a polycentric city. So my question to you is actually, what are the needs of people living in your circle to go out of that one? So what would be the argument, practical planning, services, whatever argument you want to give to me, theoretical, of the need for people to, and how often do they have? They want to be connected with other circles.
Oh, yes.
And why would, because if I live in the city and I have everything around me, walkable,
Yes.
available to me, and then what do I do outside this circle? So yeah, I might have a friend that I visit once per month, or what are all other things that I'm reaching out, how often, and how well do I need to be connected with the other circles?
Yes, I think that your question is a great question, but is let me see, impossible to reply because it is the question. Because the city has been compact for centuries and centuries up to the end of the 18th century, and the growth of London first, and so then the matter of the growth and the matter of sprawl, this low density growth, has interested all our countries, in every countries. Also our small conurbation, which is Versailles, is a small conurbation, but it is made of a lot of people living in very low density on the territory. It is how can you reply to this expectation that that convinces those people to move from the center, from Lucca, from Pisa, from Viareggio to the country? It's difficult to explain. There is a huge debate on that. The idea that we are proposing that we can propose a different way and a reliable way of going to be compact in the suburban area if we accept as an anchor street, an anchor main street, just a street that can bridge all the different parts. Other way, I create, as I said, I risk, I cannot avoid risk of creating a 15-minute island not connected with the others, and so the risk of creating a ghetto or creating a gentrified suburban area, which is one of the most frequent things that happen.
Can I add?
I have a question for you. I am a very close friend of Salvador Rueda from Barcelona, and the last book of Salvador is 501 super blocks or super areas. So Barcelona is a whole big city for proximity city. So, do you think that an efficient public transport can solve the problems of the roads and
Of course, another great question, but here the reply is much easier. Of course, public transport is one of the necessary things that has to be guaranteed if you want to connect all the islands. But there is also, I underline, it's not only a matter of transport, it is a matter of spaces, of special grids, because we cannot move walking just within a small area around our house. We have to move freely around a much bigger wide area. Of course, we need it. We have in order to avoid risk of creating 50 million bubbles, we have to be near public transport terminals, near railway station, and so on. Yep.
May I add something to the first question by Professor Poplin? Could it be also that when we think of different centralities distributed across the city, we are referring to different types of centrality? We can have local centralities aimed at responding to basic needs, to daily needs, but the city will always have some urban scale centralities built around or developed around some specialized functions aimed at responding to the needs of the whole community. Mm-hmm. So there will always be the need for people to visit these urban scale centralities.
I did not.
was
think-
like
yeah, sure.
was
Yeah.
observed by Christopher Alexander
Yeah,
in
that's
both pattern
very
language.
Of course, yes, Kristaller or Alexander is just the same. But I also would like to underline that Vienna is a very Vienna is a wonderful, compact, great city. It's not low density city. The matter of the suburban areas is much more crucial if you deal with, Florence, or if you deal with Milan, perhaps, or if we deal also with the small Brasilia, where we have to face the question of a suburban area, which is empty with activities. Here we find no centrality in all this connotation, apart from all the pre-existing urban nuclei, pre-existing the merging of the connotation.
Yeah, and of course, to clarify, I did not
Yeah.
mean that there is nothing else.
No, okay.
And I really like the discussion. So there are things that might be unique that people want, like theater or that is maybe unique in one in the city. So no, my intention was not.
No.
You know,
Fine.
or just
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Flavia, and I invite you here.
So
And Flavia Lopez, there is of course Meta Becaudator, Joanna Stavroulaki, and George Gilles. And the title is Public Transport, and so we are going to talk about public transport nodes and urban attractors, developing indexes to capture level of service and infrastructure.
yes, so first of all, thank you for attending this session. I think it's very hard to come after Valerio. He did a very nice presentation, and now I'm just doing like a humble and simple presentation about the public transport index that we are developing in the context of this project.
But it's a very very right moment to talk about public transport
Yes.
due to the
Yes,
answer
the
that was.
bridge. So
Fine.
good. So we are presenting. Valerio presented the title of the work, and I'm working in this project on our side in Gothenburg, Chalmers University of Technology. It's me, our team. It's me, Meta Vegahouse-Pont, and Joanna, and George Gilles is not in this project, but he also collaborates in developing this public transport index. So down, page down. Okay. So first of all, I think it's very important to first situate where the context of the project. And Federico did it very well. I will just trying to recap for the new attendees. So because more people are coming, so I think it's very in order to achieve this mesh and the compact city, I think it's very interesting that we comprehensively understand the movement of people in the streets, because by understanding how people move and they use their everyday life and services and how they use these attractors, these public transport attractors, we can identify, we can understand how to implement the X-minute city concept. That can be 15, can be 30, depending on the scale that we're working in this project. We're working with the 15, but I put X here to be broader. So, and in this work, we are trying to argue that to understand this movement, it's not only necessary to look on the active mobility, but also about the public transport mobility. Like that is the complementary to the active mobility. So we are arguing that the recognizing the multimodality of the movement, it's essential for understand the movement of the movement of people and goods in goods in cities, and then move forward to plan and design better cities and sustainable cities. So by multimodality, I mean the integration of the private transport network, the one that you were talking about, the private transport, I mean where the cars and people and bikes are passing through, and the public transport network. The name says everything by itself. So we are talking about this integration as multimodality. So, and here we are very anchored in this concept of city as movement economies. where the configuration of the street network, it combined with some attractors, it generates movement that creates this circle. That is kind of the movement, of course, can add something on the configuration and can attract more attractors. So we have this baseline in this project. So in this case of this work that I'm presenting here, I'm presenting this public transport nodes as attractors. So how public transport combined with the configuration with the streets can boost the movement in some areas of the city. So as I said before, this is the way that we see often separately. So this is the street network, this is the public transport network, and this is the way that we see in the cities. So the public transport, it shares the space with the street network, but at the same time, it's I would say overlapped. They are kind of overlapping network to each other because we have the. I'm going to the next slide. Sorry, not this one. So because we have the street network and we have these nodes of public transport that are actually where the movement of public transport can be found, generated by the public transport can be found. So, and of course, in this project, we have a very good overview about foreground network, and about the movement of potential generated by the street network and the weak ties, as Valerio said. We are covering this street network analysis and how the street network are providing this potential of movement. But we also are focusing on the public transport, how the public transport network combined with the street network can boost this movement. So there's a bunch of works working with the public transport as the main thing, and it's not the case of this project. In this project, the street network is the main thing, the mesh is the main thing, and the public transport is the complementary. But if you want to see other works that work with the public transport as the main thing, I think there's two excellent works that you can find. That is the transport-oriented development, like the public transport as a node, and Luca Bettolini model, like the accessibility model, where the proximity and this 50 minutes, X minute complexities can be developed around certain public transport nodes. In this case, we are arguing that the public transport combined with the street network, it's what can generate the movement, and then we can understand where the 50-minute city can be located. So when we talk about the combination of both and the potential of movement generated by the public transport network combined with the street network configuration, I'm talking about configuration, we have less studies that relate these two things, like potential of movement and potential of movement. So we have like Chiara Dia, and we have Stephen Lowe doing something, they did something in the past. We have some works, George, that is co-author as well. But then when we, but it's remained like unexplored. And as you see, the previous works were kind of 2005, 2012. We are 13 years late. So in this case, we are trying to push through like a more data-driven open source approach where we can actually create like a reproducible index that people can use the data to reproduce it as well. So the aim of this work is create a public transport index that, when combined with the street network, reviews the potential for movement generated by the multimodality in different areas. Now I'm jumping into the public transport network. So the public transport network, because we are changing topics, and I think it's very important to explain since the very beginning what I understand by public transport network. So public transport network, it's formed by nodes and links. Yes? Nodes are the stops, the stations, the docks. Where the links are the lines. Yes? Good. Everybody's following. So when I talk about like the lines, we are talking about the service operation. Yes? And now we are talking about the modes, the different modes that we have in these lines. We are talking about service operation, how many routes, how many trips these routes do, the frequency of the public transport network. We are talking about all these things. And when I'm talking about lines, when you study lines are very good to understand the frequency, the coverage of the public transport network, some sort of accessibility, that many types of accessibility that we can measure. And of course, if we're talking about like emissions, lines are very important for that. And also to identify the different modes, where the different modes are passing through, and where the dedicated infrastructure and where these lines can create like barriers. So, and we talk about the nodes. In this case of this work, the nodes are the most important thing because the nodes are related with the line, and the line gives some characteristics to the nodes. But actually, the movement is generated where the nodes are, not where the lines are, because the lines just go passing by. You see the bus passing through, but actually people arrive and depart from a node. So the movement is generated by the node. But the movement generated by the node is related to the characteristics of the lines. Okay, so in this case, we are trying to understand the potential and the consolidation of movement generated by the public transport links on each stop of the public transport network. So the public transport as this attractor of cities' movement economies. So in this work, we created two different indices. We create the level of service and we create an infrastructure. So the level of service is fully related to the potential of movement because, of course, if you have like a public transport stop with like a more frequent buses passing through, more people arriving and departing all the time, you have more potential of movement in that area. At the same time, this potential can be changed or not all over the time. If you have only buses, for instance, that don't need dedicated infrastructure, or if you have trains, things that like docks that needs dedicated infrastructure to operate. So when you have like an infrastructure installed there, it's more difficult to change things. So we talk about potential of movement and potential of consolidation of movement. And now the boring part, maybe, or the funny part for some others. How we did that? So we use the GTFS data. I don't know if you know what is GTFS data, but it means a general transfer specification. It's a standard data set for organizing public transport schedules and associated with geographic information. So it comes when you download the GTFS, it comes like text files, but actually this is the data model of the GTFS, where you have like information about the routes, about the trips, about the calendar, so which days of the month, of the week, these routes or trips are operating. We have the stop times, we have the location of the nodes, the stops that we're talking about. And yes, so we have like the route, we have, just to explain briefly what is a route, what is a trip. So a route is, for instance, we have the bus 25. Let's put like a random number in the bus. 25 is the number. It's because it's the number of the bus that I get in Gothenburg every day. So 25 is the number of the bus. So the route is the route 25. But this route 25, it passes through each stop with certain frequency. So this route has like 13 trips, let's say, like 10 trips in 1 hour. So every 6 minutes, the route is passing through. So trips, it's what characterizes the frequency of the route. So, and we created this index based on a previous work that we've done before about creating geographic models with a public transport network like information, these models for like a Gothenburg, Västra Gotland region in Sweden. So we got the GTFS and we transformed the GTFS in a geographic model. It's a previous work and there is some reference by the end if you feel like looking on the codes and everything or how to reproduce it. So we got this information. So in each stop, we have information of how many buses and the frequency and the presence of dedicated infrastructure and everything else. So, and then we go to the index. So we got, as I said before, we created like 2 different indexes. So the index, we got some very important characteristics of the public transport network, like the lines. And we related it with the stops. So for instance, the frequency, and I'm not taking it out of the blue. Is all anchored in the literature, in the public transport literature about what creates movement in certain areas. So the frequency, the number of routes that pass through stop, the frequency of that stop, the number of reachable nodes, and the distance of, it's repeated, but the distance between the reachable nodes. It can give us characteristics about the frequency and the coverage of the system in general. So what we did, it was we followed the literature review. We got some parameters. We put some parameters, and by the end we weight each feature that we have, and creating the public transport, the level of service index. The level of service index is some sort of index that you can find like a very broad literature review about it. So I think the innovation, the contribution that we are giving here is about like having a data-driven approach to create it is a reproducible approach as well. So, and then we had like the infrastructure. I think the infrastructure index, I think it was based on your idea that we had that meeting in Vienna as well. So it was about the presence of dedicated infrastructure, what we call dedicated, this hard infrastructure that is not changeable over time. So this, I think this index is quite new, it's innovative based on the, compared to the literature that we have available. So, and then the same, we had the same logic. We used like two different characteristics and we put some weight. And this weight was, we discussed, it was based on literature as well, what is more important to understand consolidation of the movement. And this is the result. So the results, we applied it for Gothenburg so far, but we have the plans to apply for the other cities that are involved in the project as well. So this is the map of the results in Gothenburg, and then when we compare the level of service in the infrastructure index, we can see, of course, the infrastructure is located fully in the city center. This is the city center, and we have like some sort of a spider going to some access. And in some points on the suburb areas, as Federico and Valerio said, we are looking to find this, where to implement 50-minute cities in suburban areas. So when we go to suburban areas, we can see that we have low level of infrastructure, but in some areas, they try to compensate with high level of service. And in other areas, they don't have like anything. Probably this is a weak tie, probably, or something like that. So this is something that we have developed. This is just to showcase the index and how the index is reflect in this space. And the next steps for this project, we are going to, I don't need to present the project anymore, so we are going to connect these public transport nodes to the streets. So, and this is in the phase that we are in discussion right now. So the public transport is 100% understood as an attractor. But how to combine this attractor to the street network that we have. Like, so now we are in this phase discussing in the project. And of course, the conclusion and the discussion, the index, they show promising capturing the potential of movement and consolidation of movement generated by the public transport systems. It captured difference between city center and suburban areas. I think we were succeed in this sense. So the next steps, we are going to apply for the other cities in context of the MC2. So far, we have the plans to apply for Lille, Nice, and Vienna. I'm sorry, guys, Italy, the data is not super good, so we're trying to find out. And of course, we have a next step with the public transport index that we are going to combine with the foreground network, as I said, that we are discussing it right now, and with the population. So these are my main the literature review and the references. Thank you for your attention, and this is my GitHub in case of you want to find the codes.
May I, before the questions,
yes,
I'd like to express the privilege we have to having you. They are, how can I say, the pioneer, the pathfinder in the desert area between a configurational view and a public transport view, which are two fields that have to be related, but are tricky to be related because they respond to different logics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for us what we are doing, and it is matter. And so, please, is there any question to Flavia? Yeah.
Flavia, thank you so much. I really find your presentation that it was really excellent. Thank you. I am curious, this is more about the curiosity, Because, and you explained very well that the aim is to develop an index where it brings together the street connectivity with the service, but to benefit the population. And what I find in transport and planning and also technology design, we design and we provide a service for the average population. We consider some kind of a profile, and we expect that the service or the technology is going to reach like almost all users. What is really not true, because as we do research, we need really to understand the value of accounting for the real world diversity of groups. And when it comes to street connectivity, accessibility, I think it's very interesting to phrase like how is the index of connectivity and the service, but how it reach different groups of the population, because an average group maybe it fits and benefits very well, while in the same city area maybe there are some groups that where they really face barriers. So I was wondering if you also plan in a certain way to go deeper in the population aspect.
Yes, sure. I agree with you in mostly that you were saying. I think it's in some sort of a way, this is a very like general approach that privileges the average, like the average people, 100%. And I think this is the aim of this, that what we are doing in this project, in the sense of the creating this general approach to trying to design. And then I think when you have the baseline, I think this is the baseline. You can start to add, to go, to dig deep. When we don't have the baseline, it's quite hard to go deep, because like Valeria said, it's something that I said, I don't know yet how to connect it to the streets, because like people before did like many attempts, but how to do it right now with the technology that we have. And by having the baseline, I think this is the next step. 100%, I agree with you. This is the next step. It's going deep and understanding the barriers and understanding like from the maybe like from individual perspective, of course, because when we talk about this accessibility, there is like a broader literature about how accessibility can be or public transport can be perceived, and it can be perceived from the view of the user as well. So when you are a user and you go in there, it's different of this that we are doing here. So this is the general thing. We are trying to understand the system, and by understanding the system, we are trying to propose new things. So, but first we need to show that. Thank you for your question.
I would like just to add a thing.
Yes.
I have an experience once upon a time, and I've been visiting the city, the metropolitan area of Atlanta in Georgia, and I was located in a suburban area, which is some 50 kilometers from the center, and they didn't want any kind of public connection to the metropolitan area because they didn't want any kind of a public accessibility to the area. So as to underline that, there are also social issues. We give for granted that for us accessibility is good, is necessary, is wonderful, but in some cases isolation can be considered a plus for education, which is kind of difficult to understand. That is all. Alessandro.
Yes, if there are.
And the last one.
Thank you.
And we have Alessandro Raldi and Benjamin Williams identifying retail-scape transformations, a methodological framework for spatial temporal analysis in urban environment. And it's just to complete this global view over our DUT project. We have been talking of data and reliability data, location within the general framework, public transportation. Now we are talking of activities and retail.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Alessandro Aldi. I'm a researcher at the ICCSA laboratory at the University of French Côte d'Azur on the French Riviera. And I'm presenting this work, which is entitled Identifying Retail-Scale Transformations. But it's a common work with Benjamin Wayens, who is a retail geographer, specialized retail geographer in Brussels at the University Libre de Bruxelles. Actually, this work is something that we started doing before the MC2 project, and the results will be injected into the project in the next few steps. So first of all, my colleagues already started discussing about the 15-minute city. I don't have to explain more, but I just want to say that the 15-minute city of Carlos Moreno is something very functional. And the main message, is the simplest message of the 15 minutes model is that every citizen has to be within 15 minutes distance to 6 main functions. Then you have different researchers that have been exploring which function, and if we have to add new function or remove others. And actually internationally, it has a lot of success, this model, but in France it's highly criticized, especially in academia. But then when we go in the public system, in local authorities, this model is something that is actually implemented. This is an example from the French Riviera, from the Marseille region, where the local authorities have been detecting the 6 functions and trying to combine them and trying to map where we have all those functions, thus identifying the central areas. As obvious, we are expecting all the functions are. And of course, this is not what we want to do in our project. This is not what we want to do in EMC2, because there's some huge literature before Carlos Moreno's, starting from the beginning of the century, discovering both the structure of cities and the structure also of functional activities within the city. And 2 main problems are that we are dealing with in the EMC2 project. One is the one about the structure of the city that my colleague Valerio Coutinho already introduced. And the second one is the one that I'm down. No. Well, I go here. Something. Well, the second point, and we'll go on with the presentation, is the fact that this function, nothing is said in this model about how the ecosystems of retail and services should be organized within space. And more important, second point of this second point is actually we are living in a phase of our.
It's getting worse and worse.
Oh, thank you. I'm a lucky guy. Well,
okay, I'm minor.
You can say.
Robert, you pressed something that.
The second point is that retail activity, the retail sector has known many revolutions throughout the last 150 years, and actually started from the 90s, and especially started from 2008 with the e-commerce and m-commerce. The retail scapes are changing a lot. So what about the 15-minute cities in this evolving situation of the commerce? I destroyed the computer. Yeah. Let's go next. At least the name.
Ma no, se vedi devi togliere il cursore. No, devi togliere il cursore.
So I go ahead. Without presentation. So the goal of this all the common happy project now. Yeah.
What is that?
And well, to deal with this the second problem about the retail scape, the ecosystems.
Just a moment. Alessandro.
We should.
No.
I can use this smaller, this smaller version.
No, perché io ho tolto. Riesce ad allargare. Il problema con il cavo HDMI. Qua. Perché adesso io per esempio la vedo. Un secondo.
Well, we have a lot of theories. I can discuss about these theories that have been developed in the last 20 years, 50, 60 years. And especially in France and in the Anglo-Saxon world, we have the retail geography, which is a sub-discipline of the economic geography and the regional economy. And especially in France, it's like real community, strong community that are very interested into these ecosystems of services. Many images, but not the one I need. And
Yes,
but probably as you know, start
Only
with
moment.
Nice.
Let's try.
Yeah, but we have to go
Bye,
back.
you mean.
Back. No, back. Okay, right. Yeah, I was trying to. Okay, these are all the models that have been described starting from the 30s, the 50s, the 70s, the 60s. This is the Brian Berry models from describing the Chicago's economical development and the spatial organization of activities. And of course, in the 90s, we had the last most common, most known model, which is the post-hierarchical model of Dan Brown. I don't remember his first name. And in this model, as you can see, ecosystem of retail and services are described by two main descriptors. On one side, we have the functions. We have general, specialist, or ancillary functions, and the other side we have the form functions. This is something specifically related to the retail ecosystem, which is not found in natural ecosystem. The second descriptors is how the functions are laid down on the space, on the urban space. So they could be clustered or on the point. They could be linear or called ribbon in the Brian Berry's model, or could be spatialized, a pervasive distribution of points in the street network. So the first step that I've been developing back in my in my PhD was to develop a specific retail fabric assessment, a database empirical approach to describe these patterns, these structures, these ecosystems. And so, of course, starting from these two groups of descriptors, functions and form, you can collect points from every point on the network. You can collect the number of points of different functions, like food, clothing, leisure, at different distances. And then it's like the Valerio is not here, function that he used to collect the number of functions and services that you have around a certain distance. But the problem is that we cannot use it as it is, because of course a number of 6, 5, 7 doesn't say anything about how much that region is, how much that function is important in that specific part of the city. So what we have to do is to compare the local value of accessibility to a specific function to the overall regional level. So we have a kind of LISA discretization, which is not a LISA, it's similar logic. This maps allows you to understand where we have an over or under representation of a specific function within the city. And you can repeat it for different functions. And then you have also these form descriptors. I developed a specific local fractal indicators in order to identify a specific local measure to describe if the points are clustered in red, close to 0, close to 1 if they are linearly distributed, or close to 1.6, which is the fractal dimension of the network, in order to identify a pervasive distribution of points. And then, of course, you can combine them. We use Bayesian clustering methods in order to combine these descriptors. And we have been able to identify different ecosystems. As you can see, there are different cities of the French Riviera, and you can recognize similar patterns of historical centers with a leisure-oriented distribution of ecosystem. You have the luxury in purple and pink here, luxury-oriented ecosystem, the residential compact with different structure, and so on and so forth. Also, in the suburban areas, you have these linear purple lines or the clustered sectors with highly specialized functions. And you can derive a kind of archetypal distribution of function and ecosystems within a specific region. But the problem is that there's no temporal dimension in here. So the next step that we have been dealing with in the last few years is how to introduce the temporal dimension in that descriptors. And again, if you look back at the theories about the evolution of the ecosystems, we have few examples. This one is the one of Berger Garnier in France, in the French-speaking community. But the problem is that in the 50s and in the 90s, all these studies were focusing on evolution expansions. While nowadays, as I told you before at the beginning of the presentation, we are looking at shrinking ecosystems or transforming ecosystems. So there are different transformations that are not the same that have been studied before in the last century. So how to do that? We have some examples on some studies, some also practitioners, local commerce, chambre de commerce, that produce reports, but they are always at the administrative level. And we are not able to identify like locally at the different scales how the transformation are happening. So first idea that we had, let's reproduce the same scheme with the same functional and form descriptors at different scales. But the problem, as you can imagine, is exponential because you have different radii, different functions, and then you have different years. So you could apply, of course, clustering, or we have the potential nowadays of the power computation to implement clustering or highly sophisticated methods to put together these trends. But the problem is that, again, we are looking at different time shots, and we are not looking at the process of evolution. So this is not the path that we want to follow. We also test K-shaped and time series timings in order to identify patterns of evolution around every point. We look at how this number of bakeries or any other kind of function are evolving. But again, these models, these approaches are highly sensitive to the initial conditions, or in this case of the ARIMA models, you need a lot of parameters to fit the hypothetical curve, and also you cannot find correspondence in the theories that can explain what the parameters means actually. Well, so in that case, we had to downscale our computational desire, I would say, and we tried with polynomial fitting in order to fit different kind of curves to different to every point in our dataset. But again, you will find many different ways of fitting the temporal trends at every location. And you will find, again, an exponential number of possibilities with every time different parameters. So again, it was too complicated to put everything together. So finally, the last choice that we had was the simplest one, finally. We used the band candle test, which allows you to identify increasing or decreasing monotonous trends. But also, differently from the others, it has also a significativity test. So it's able to allow you to identify trends, like absolute trends and spurious trends. And of course, the main candle test is just identifying if you're evolving in time, if your presence of, for example, bakeries are reducing or increasing over time with this key significativity trends. But the problem is that, of course, we can apply it again for every function. But what about that function compared to the rest of the ecosystem? So what we did is to implement this main candle test for every function plus the rest of the function minus the one we are considering. For example, bakeries and all functions minus bakeries. And then we can use the S parameter of the main candle, and we transform it in polar coordinates in order to easily represent the trends into what we call it the rows of the wind of change. And of course, you have on one axis the overall growth of the overall retail ecosystem. On the other axis, you have the specific function that you are analyzing. So you have, for example, on the top right quadrant, you have the evolution of, for example, bakeries and the evolution of the overall function around bakeries. That means that, for example, if the two slopes are the same, you are in a concordant growth. Everything is growing at the same time. If the bakeries are growing more or less than the others, it means that you have an outperforming or underperforming growth. Similar, if you go in the other side of the opposite position of the graph, you have the uniform decline. Bakeries and other functions are declining together. That means that there's a polarization of the neighborhood. Or you have an excessive decline or resilient decline if the bakeries are the least one to leave that specific region. But what's most important is the other two parts of the graphic, because you could have, for example, bakeries that are growing, but the rest of the ecosystem is decreasing, is declining. Or vice versa, you have the rest of the ecosystem increasing and the bakeries that are disappearing. So it could mean, for example, functional substitution or transformation in terms of population or other social factors. And of course, you can implement it like with real data. And every point corresponds to a specific point on the network. And the size of the points, the distance of the points from the center means also that stronger transformations. The more close you are to the center, of course, the transformations are slower. slower. And you can see that the city center is the one where we have the slowest transformation, of course, because we have high amounts of data of points and high amounts of services and retail. So even if we sometimes we can perceive some transformation on the overall amount of retails, it's not that much. And we start also having, in this case, it was I can say clothing system. So you can also see the main streets, the high streets here and here in Nice that are actually knowing a decrease in terms of clothing sector. That is substituted probably by other functions. And this analysis could also be replicated with considering two functions at a time. So you can observe if you have a kind of substitution of one function to the other. And again, you have, it's a similar interpretation. You have the collaborative growth or the joint decline, or you have the balancing where one is taking the place of the other, or vice versa, the second one taking the place, leaving the place of the first one. And again, you can map and you can observe in cities where things are changing. Of course, there are many parameters here again that you can use. For example, the significativity of the Kendall test. You can filter out those that could be considered as a spurious trends, as I told you at the beginning, but also the radius of the analysis. You can have 150 or 300 or 600 meters radius. Normally, for retail geography, they tend to consider slow and local radii. 75, 50, 75, 100, and then under 50, maximum 300 meters. Beyond 300 meters, people normally they use cars, and so the logic behind all this approach that is pedestrian based on network, it doesn't fit. And of course, some caveats about this model is still an ongoing study. The first caveat is that in these trends we are missing the initial contextual differences. Contextual differences, which means that we are not considering the amount of retail that were present at the beginning of our trends. Second point, the analysis overlooked also the overrepresentation of function and their temporal variation relative to broader regional trends, which means that we should still compare if that trend is something local or something about the entire region or nationally trend that we are observing. So we have to identify if it's something like specific to a neighborhood or not. And then other considerations that, of course, the method that I've been developing with this colleague of mine is very useful as a tool that could be used also by public agencies in order to detect. It could be also used like practically if we are studying specific transformation in the city, like gentrification, touristification, because we can focus on specific functions and their co-evolution with others. But if we want to study the overall transformation of the ecosystem of commerce and retail services, we have a bouquet of roses. We don't have still something complete describing the co-evolution in every subsystem and sub-part of the cities. We're trying to do some tests, but of course, this is not specialized yet. We are just comparing, analyzing kind of correlation analysis of the different trends and different evolutions. And you can already recognize some functional similarity and co-occurrences in terms of transformations. And well, I think I'll finish here. I'm very sorry for the bad presentation, but I've been destabilized.
Is there any quick question to Alessandro? I say quick, of course, because of the time. Of course, let's say, thanks to the absence of Giancarlo Barini, we are with more time. We are almost on time. Is there any question? Yeah.
Very nice. I enjoyed very much the presentation, so don't worry about it. I was just wondering, like, this is fantastic to look at, like how things are changing and the mapping of changes. Is there any of your intention to ask question why? Like,
yeah, I mean, the whys normally are already behind the choice of the function. I mean, if you have a specific problem that you want to detect, like gentrification or touristification, or you should define what are the functions that you want to study and how they are evolving. So it's something that you have to do at the beginning of your study. Here, I try to use like general functions because our goal was also to have like a broader approach to study the evolution, not only of functional evolution, but also the structural evolution in terms of spatial structure of retails. Are we still gonna have high streets, main streets distributing that way, or we'll have another kind of scenario? So normally it's something that we have to use it at the beginning to inform this kind of approaches.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Non sono fatto prendere da panico.
Da qua, ma non è vero, ma non si è visto, te ne sei reso conto solo tu.
Grazie.
My presentation,
Cos'è questo accesso a pedali che si spegne? Federico, questo è morto. Guarda,
Ho questo potere.
è andato. No, ma è ripartito. Ma quindi questa non è l'accensione? Come cazzo funziona il computer in questo posto? Il punto non è il punto.
Esatto, no, di
Ma per quale
queste
motivo?
lettere. Pensavo la tastiera fosse...
Aspetta che forse abbiamo però... Aspetta che siamo ancora...
Come non lo farei io? Perché è già lì così per perché non hanno usato
We are done. You are not
anche parziale. Sì, è un casino.
Hello, are you there? For the presentation in the room F at 4 o'clock, 4 p.m.
È la stessa roba che mandano sulla digestione famosa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, we hear you.
Great.
Yeah, after 5 minutes, I will call you again, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Non è che le urgenze, al massimo se metto un portoncino non posso anche finire.
as well. Hi, are you there, Masayuki?
Yes, hello.
Okay, we are starting now. Thanks for putting your research into this workshop, and you can start when you want.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So I'm gonna share my screen.
Thank you.
Okay, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it, I think.
Okay. So let's get started.
Yes, please.
So, hello, this is Masayuki Fujita. I'm an undergraduate student from the University of Tokyo, the Department of Social Psychology. And today I'd like to present our work on behalf of Dr. Federico Mara and Dr. Dario Esposito. And the title of our work is Agent-Based Modeling at the Microscale of Urban Environments, a framework integrating imitation in pedestrian wayfinding. So this work is something I have been working on since last summer for my research internship. Okay. So um, it has been said that it is important to understand the behavioral tendencies that humans have in their spatial behaviors, such as walking, for a better urban or architectural design. And for predicting pedestrian flow, there are mainly two ways of the prediction and modeling. So one is bottom-up modeling, which is like agents-based modeling, and on the other hand, there is top-down modeling. It includes something like space syntax. And agent-based modeling (ABM) is a very popular way to integrate human behavioral rules into pedestrian simulation. So I belong to the social psychology department, and I try to implement individual psychological decision processes into pedestrian decision making. So that's why we decided to focus on agent-based modeling rather than top-down modeling. However, traditional agent-based modeling has been missing one or several important aspects. They include social decision making at strategic and or tactical levels. So, social aspect or social decision making refers to people's decision making, where their decisions can be influenced by other people, by like how they behave or what kind of decisions they make. So that's the social decision making is about. And for the latter part, the strategic and the tactical levels. So basically, the pedestrians' decision making can be divided into three levels: operational, tactical, and strategic. So operational is micro level navigation through an environment. So it includes avoiding collision with other people or avoiding collision with walls. So it's about the next step or the direction and the speed of the each aid and adjust for their next step. And meanwhile, tactical refers to planning of a path to a destination. So when you have one specific destination, there are several alternatives for the routes to get there. So deciding which way to take is at the level of tactical. And the last one, strategic level, is about choice of a destination. So it's about where you want to go. So there are these three types of decision making included in pedestrian behaviors. And our questions are in what occasions do social aspects matter for pedestrian decisions, and how we can incorporate these social behaviors into agent-based modeling. And I'd like to talk about the importance of integrating social influence by giving two examples. So one is tourist spot. So imagine you are visiting famous, very popular tourist spot for the first time. So, and you get off a train and you want to visit that spot. It's close to the station. However, you do not know specifically where the destination is. You don't know the location. And unfortunately, you do not have a map. So, but however, there are some other tourists going in the same direction. You can notice that many people are going in the same direction. When you see that a phenomenon, you kind of assume that these people are heading to the same destination, which is that very famous, popular sightseeing spot that you want to go to as well. So in that case, following others can lead you to that spot. So even if you do not have a map, just following others can lead you to the destination. So this is kind of realistic example, I think, and this illustrates how other pedestrians can inform the location of your destination. And the second example is the temporal market. So imagine you are visiting a temporal market, such as Christmas market, for the first time. So some people like you are first-time visitors. They do not know about the market, what kind of shops are out there. But there are some other people who are very familiar with the market because they have repeatedly visited the market annually. And again, map is not available, so you do not know what kind of shop is where. And however, you want to need or explore the environment, the market, and you want to buy some good items for your good experience. In that case, following others again can lead you to a street with good stores. So we can assume that the market can be divided into different streets, and that these streets have disparity in the number of people or in the density of the crowd. So there is one very popular street, while there are some other more like empty, unpopular streets. In that case, just going in the path streets that are more like crowded can benefit you because they are popular because there are some good stores and these people who already have the knowledge about the market, they will first go into the street. Then all you have to do is just follow the majority. And moreover, not only the path choice, but also the destination choice can be benefited from following the majority. So joining a long wait line of a popular store can reward you with good items. So when you see different stores with different length of wait lines, you kind of assume that the shop with the long wait line is very popular because they are offering some good stuff. So even if you do not really know about the environment, it's very uncertain, you can still guess the quality of the shop. So this example also illustrates how other pedestrians can signal the quality of shops and streets, and that will affect some pedestrians' decisions for streets, like which path to take or in which direction they are going, or which shop to visit. And this kind of following the majority behavior has been investigated by social psychologists or other behavior scientists. The keyword is conformity. So psychologist Ash, he has done a very popular, famous experiment, and he showed how people can easily give in to peer pressure, how people can easily decide to imitate other people when they are put in a very uncertain environment. So we already know that people have the tendency to follow the majority when uncertain. And there are some explanations for why that can happen. And the one explanation is the informational effect. So it goes like this. People imitate others or people follow the majority because you can expect to get to the correct answers or more adaptive behaviors in an uncertain environment. So statistically, you can imagine that many people, when you see many people choosing the same option, behaving the same way, you kind of assume that, oh, it's the best way to behave or the best option to take. Like compared to the more like unpopular choice, you will be more confident about the choice that majority are taking. And this kind of conformity has been learned, has been investigated in modeling situations and a social learning. So it's learning through imitation. When people are put in an uncertain environment, they have to learn, explore the environment. When they explore the environment, they will imitate the more knowledgeable others. And there are some agent-based modeling for social learning or conformity. So that's what the social scientists or psychologists have been investigating. On the other hand, agent-based modeling for pedestrians have neglected this kind of phenomenon. So current ways of modeling pedestrian behaviors include social force modeling. So it does include social influences. Pedestrian agents are influenced by other pedestrians. However, the social influence is only limited to the operational level, which is the direction and the speed of each agent. So it's a very micro level. And also, it is considered to be something bothering or negative. So in the social force model, pedestrians will try to avoid going the same place or same direction as the other pedestrians so that they can avoid collision with others. So if they are taking other pedestrians as something negative influences. So I would like to suggest that we should implement agent-based modeling that are reflecting positive social influence that I mentioned. Now these influences should be not only on the operational level, but also on the tactical and strategic levels. So this is example pedestrian decision model. So this is about path choice dynamics. So these blue bubbles show different behavioral drivers. So imitation and congestion avoidance are social influences that pedestrian can have. And this one is preference for accessibility and attractiveness. It's more like static factor. And these arrows, green arrows show positive effect, while the red ones show negative effect on each factors. So let's start from here. So first, imagine you are in a temporary market. So you first might want to visit the more accessible, more like a main street place because it's easy to access and they might be more attractive. So many people going that path. Then eventually the density level will go up and up. Then when some people with no map, with no destination, when they see the majority going in one specific path, they will consider following the majority. This is what imitation is about. So density has positive effect on imitation, and that imitation will boost the density in that path. And however, when density hits the kind of threshold, congestion avoidance happens because people don't want to get caught up in a crowd that prevents them from smooth navigation. It's kind of waste of time. So people start avoiding imitation or avoiding going to the more accessible streets. Right. So that's how congestion avoidance can relax or relieve the density level. So this is the entire interplay among different spatial behavioral factors. And this is more like a specific agent model, decision model, but this can be divided into two largely. One is path choice, and the other is destination choice. So when you do not have a destination, let's start from here. When you do not have a destination, you first have to explore the environment, you have to learn what they are offering, the market is offering, for example. So when you explore the environment, you have to first choose which path to take. When you choose that, you will consider different factors such as popularity for imitation, crowd level for congestion level, congestion avoidance, and you'll have to also consider the attractiveness and accessibility. So you kind of weigh different factors in kind of a utility function, then you will decide which path to take. Then when you go into the street, you will learn about the environment. You will learn about what kind of shops are out there, what they are offering. Then you memorize it. Then after a certain time passed, you will decide based on your memory of the shops. You will decide which shop to visit. So you'll decide the destination. And then when you visit the new shop, you will update another shop for your further exploration, for further better experiences in your market. So people can switch between path choice and destination choice, or exploration or exploitation, based on their experiences and memories. So that's how agent-based modeling can be conducted. That includes some social influences on tactical and strategic levels. So in conclusion, social decision making is a very important aspect in spatial behavior. So integration of imitation into strategic and tactical levels is very important for more valid modeling in uncertain environments. Sorry, I'm in a school library and it's kind of closed.
繰り返します。総合図書館はあと10分で閉館します。
Okay, so
お忘れ物がないよう気をつけてお帰りください。
however, more empirical data is necessary for model calibration, and simulating in different spatial settings is also essential. Anyways, this agent-based modeling will provide insights for designing new areas or new buildings for safer and efficient pedestrian experiences, including reducing congestion and the risk of crowd collapse. So unfortunately, we couldn't do the actual simulation, but hopefully we can start working on it soon. Okay, that's pretty much it from me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your presentation, Masayuki. It was brilliant, I think. I have some questions, but first I would like to ask to the audience. Maybe they have some questions.
I'm interested in which tool for agent-based modeling did they use, and yeah, just a very simple question.
Did you hear?
No, sorry.
Professor Poplin is asking which software are you using for agent-based modeling?
So for now, we are thinking of NetLogo.
NetLogo, okay.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of agent-based models using NetLogo, so I think we can build on the past research.
Okay. Any question?
I'm very interesting to know because this presentation it focuses on the social influence, but then for the decision making at the pedestrian level, it also mentions attractiveness. So how both are correlated or not correlated in order to influence the pedestrian's decision? Is attractiveness having more weight in influencing the decision, or is social influence influencing more the pedestrian behavior decision?
Can you get
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that's why we need so we still don't know which is more important. Although I kind of assume that attractiveness or accessibility is more like fundamental, has more fundamental effect. So, but we need some empirical research, like doing some virtual pedestrian experiments, so that we can know that how people can people weigh different factors. So yeah, that's a good point.
Any other? We have something. Okay. Last question from me. Did you consider any cultural background for this very tidy algorithm or model?
Okay, so now we haven't thought about cultural differences. We kind of assume that people are the same across the world. But I think it's very important to consider different cultural backgrounds. Maybe Japanese people uh, decide which way to take differently from compared to other people. Maybe it's been said that Japanese are more conformers, so they might follow the majority compared to other uh, people from other backgrounds. But yeah, I think that's area we also need some empirical evidence, and also I think we can adjust agent-based modeling for other people, such as people in a wheelchair or people like older people or kids, so that we can adjust their speed or decision-making processes. Yeah, so I think there is a lot of space for improvements for the agent-based modeling.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
You with the next presentation now. And my colleague, Muslim Hajar, will present his topic, and the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, I am Muslim Hajar. I want to just introduce myself briefly. My PhD was about spatial data integration, and after PhD, I focused more on the enrichment processes, the prediction models that can capable of enriching VGI dataset like OpenStreetMap. And with Valerio, in my postdoc, I studied on that issue, and we developed a new approach to estimate the highway tax. It was very good work because it predicted highway tax like more than 80% automatically by just using the geometry of roads and topology of roads, and just intrinsic measures. And in this work, I focused more on the footprints, digital footprints of visitors. What type of digital footprints? You will see that I focus on the Google Maps reviews. If a person visits a city and he or she finds a good place to eat something, what can affect spatially more his or her reaction about that certain place? Is that space direct her or him to give that command? Yes, in this presentation, you will see my motivation on this topic and the study area and importance of that study area and the structure of our data. And I will give you the approach which can generate the features of used in prediction model. And I will give you some evaluation of my prediction results, performance, and also we will conclude with some feature ideas. Understanding visitor behavior on street or on venues, the places, is important. It is obvious. And the questions are also important. Where are people going? What do they like? how dense is food traffic. And if you want to make a research about these questions, you need key data sets that consist of pedestrian count, obviously, spatial informations, and some kind of output from urban configuration. But the most hard part is pedestrian count data. I don't have pedestrian count data. Maybe in your city, it can be easy. For example, in the beginning of this year, a paper was published by my wife. It is a commercial, and she published that paper by using pedestrian count data in Melbourne City. In Melbourne City, there are a lot of sensors that count pedestrian flows. But we don't have in the city, and I know in most of European cities don't have such kind of sensors, privacy-friendly sensors, let's say. So data from CCTV can be used, sensors, infrared counters, of course, can be used, or even mobile cellular network, which are not privacy-friendly, but can be used in such kind of research, but they are expensive. Our goal is simple. Can we predict how people rate places? Specifically in this work, I will say EDO, briefly, eating and drinking out places on Google Maps. And in this work, instead of using a real pedestrian data, I will propose a synthetic visitor count data, which you will see generated from public review volume data in Google Maps API. So our study area is Bakırköy. It's a district in Istanbul, as you see, about 10 kilometers from here away, and a prominent center on Istanbul's European side, popular destination for its dense clustering of university preparatory, postgraduate courses, and also for all ages, not only young persons, shopping facilities. So there is a concentration of mobility in that district, and it creates high volume of pedestrian movement. And there is an, of course, need for this population alternative EDO, eating and drinking out places. So that these are the reasons I choose Bakırköy. In Google Maps, all point of interest data in that center Bakırköy region in our study area, 1056. The specifically eating and drinking out places is about 167. The data consists of bakery, bar, cafe, and restaurants. Point of interest data derived from, of course, Google Maps API, and the features that I retrieved from the API are rating attribute, review count attribute, it is integer, but rating is not integer, it is like there is a discrete beginning from 0, and the top score is 5, as you know, and these in this interval there is a mean value of comments. Also, I retrieved a type semantic information for the analyze different type of eating and drinking out places. In this map, you see all points, all point of interest data with different colors. But for the eating and drinking out places, I choose black color. I merged all that class. So to prediction model, I created two categorical classes to make it easy. For example, high rated, high scored, or low scored. And to make the analysis feasible, I used quantile interval because quantile interval gives equal number of objects in our data set. So to estimate, to predict our dependent variables, which is rating attribute, we use also some special features. For the special features, I used OpenStreetMap as a source, and instead of directly use OpenStreetMap broad network, I made a pre-process to create network topology. To create the topology, I first dissolved all the network and then split them from the junctions, because I will, as you will see, I will make some computation on the junctions, both topologically and geometrically. Here you see the workflow of the feature generation, which are used in this study. Our sources, Google Maps API and OpenStreetMap repository. The road networks comes from the OpenStreetMap repository, and the other information comes from the Google Maps API, like point of interest data and their attributes. Only the places that have at least 10 reviews are considered as trustworthy, reliable Google points. Consumer folk, you can change the number if your local area of interest is not satisfied, does not satisfy your work. You can increase or decrease the review threshold. But in my observation, 10 reviews was good choice. Consumer-focused locations turns into densified digital footprints. So the idea behind the proposed synthetic pedestrian counts are, sorry, there's a fly, very, very small, you can see. The idea behind the proposed synthetic pedestrian count are that areas near popular places with high review counts are likely to have more pedestrian activity. That is an assumption, but you can assume it as a hypothesis or premise. IDV interpolation techniques fits very well for this idea because it assumes that the influence of each data point decreases with distance. So I used IDV interpolation to create a review count surface in that area. Pedestrian activity is estimated by interpolating review volume across the surface of our study area, like a shadow count of foot traffic. Each grid point's weighted value on the surface is associated to its closest street, thus a mean value of several grid points is assigned to each street. Review counts within the shopping malls, let's say carousel and capacity shopping malls, are included in the synthetic pedestrian count to represent the crowd pedestrian population. Because in synthetic pedestrian counts, we use all kind of point of interest data, not only eating and drinking out. We used all of them to create a reliable surface, foot traffic surface. However, the places are excluded in other feature generations because they might be relatively independent from neighboring streets, because the places inside the shopping malls can affect more inside of building, the indoor flow. But the outside flow is more related with streets. So for the eating and drinking out places, we only choose the places. I only choose the places directly related on the street. Voronoi area and the type is also directly related to the Edo places that I retrieved from Google Maps to express local proximity as a feature for each eating and drinking out place. We used Voronoi area. The area of each polygon is assigned to the regarding central node. And the type also one of the feature in my prediction model. As I told you before, bakery, bar, cafe, and restaurants are considered to represent the unique functional properties among Edo places. Distance Euclidean is one of the geometric measure in this model. It gives the answer how far the closest distance is to a potentially densified junction instead of a dead-end street. Because the idea is that if maybe a visitor's reaction can be affected from dead-end location, or maybe affected to the proximity to a junction, an Euclidean distance. And also I use proximity from the end node and middle node of the closest street of a certain place. And it also gives that question an answer. Is an Edo place more like around the junction of a street or not? Because some street has dead ends and a junction, but some street has two junctions, and it may be short, may be long, but it may affect. And also I use a topological distance, not the geometric distance, instead of in addition to proximity from end or mid distance, I used topological distance, which gives total number of steps over the street network from an Edo place to the closest pedestrian-friendly roads. I will give an example for this type of measure. Don't worry, it is hard to understand from the sentences, I know. The lower topological distance means that the place has a high potential to reach higher number of pedestrian customers. 8 minutes. And also I use highway tag, as you know. Yes, here is an example. You see black line represents different type of OpenStreetMap network. Pedestrian-friendly networks are pedestrian tagged streets, and also the footway streets are pedestrian-friendly. And the other one is, of course, they may pedestrian-friendly, but we don't know from the data set directly. Assume that we have two places, blue and the red one is an Edo place. The topological distance can be calculated the number of steps. It is integer value, of course. For example, from can you see that? No. Okay. For example, from this place, you can in one step reach pedestrian-friendly street. But from here to reach a pedestrian-friendly, you need to cross two streets. First of all, this residential, and then turn left, you need to pass this residential. So blue one has 2 unit distance and red one has 1. And for example, this one close to middle, but this one close to the junction, which is represented as end. So we are trying to enrich the data with different type of measures, because all the measures will help random forest to predict more confidential. Also, I use centrality measures, but I will not explain all of them. Betweenness, closeness, degree, agent vector, harmonic cuts, loads, and page rank centrality. Briefly, let's pass to results. Primary goal is to predict visitor scores, which is saved in rating attribute, and rating split it into two categories, high and low by quality type. The proposed approach was applied to Bakırköy study area to evaluate how various spatial features, synthetic pedestrian count, and centrality measures relate to digital consumer behavior in Google Maps. Random forest was used to classify the data, which is very good for handling heterogeneous features like in this study. Data was split randomly for training and testing, 80% and 20%. Here you see the different result of centrality measures, which will help as well in our prediction model, because representing different aspects is good for random forest. The resolution is not good, I don't understand, but yeah, as you see, low. Is it working? Not important. Yes. As you see here is the low class is predicted like 83. High is little bit low, but it's okay. Weighted prediction without performance is 76%. It is not bad. It is not perfect, but over 50% is good for this work, because it's like a coin. So if you are an entrepreneur and if you want to open a new shop and eating out places, you can use such kind of analysis, output of analysis, to infer the places. Yes, in this graph you see a sorted feature importance graph with standard deviation across trees. As you see, distance, the Euclidean distance to junction is the most significant one, and Voronoi follows it, and synthetic pedestrian count data was the first one in other paper, but that was real pedestrian count data. This one is synthetic pedestrian count data, and here, as you see, it is the third one. But the important part is that the standard deviation is very low in synthetic pedestrian count data, which gives the potential that this measure to the first one. It has the potential, I believe, we can discuss. And as you see, the other centrality and topological distance has some roles, of course, centrality values, but some of them, for example, degree centrality has very low role. What is this? It is bad, it is good. We can say that it has a role in this prediction model, and it is important. It has a role. Otherwise, you can see a standard deviation like that, and his role is very, very, very small, like converging to zero, but it is okay. Even it seems very low. Yeah, I'm concluding. The analysis demonstrated that factors such as the proximity to densified junctions, local catchment areas, and synthetic pedestrian data play a pivotal role in shaping consumers' digital rating. with centrality and various spatial metrics further complementing these insights. The proposed approach can be employed as a decision support tool for entrepreneurs considering the location of new places, businesses. By estimating the potential consumer rating at various candidate properties, entrepreneurs can identify the most promising sites based on projected visitor scores. A key strength of this study is its avoidance of sensor-based cellular network or CCTV data collection, thereby reducing financial overheads and privacy concerns. Nonetheless, several limitations warrant attention. The synthetic pedestrian measure may not capture short-term time changes. There is no time information in that analysis, and it is not good. Future work may consider additional data inputs such as temporal factors by social media, close real social media data interactions, and land use variations, and also consumer demographics to validate and expand upon the present findings. I need your views if you advise, if you provide some information, like you can use that kind of measure for this prediction model because it would be very useful. It reflects the people, the visitors' reaction. It would be good. If you say something like that, I would be very happy. We can work together, something like that. If not, I am also open to work with you. Do you have any questions?
Yes, a comment. I mean, we work together and I completely share the problem of data. As you know, we share the same problem, and I appreciate a lot the method that you use. A point was about the type of analysis, the network analysis that you did. If you considered a global analysis in calculating the betweenness and all the configurational metrics, or if you use the local radius, since you are referring to the pedestrian movement.
Yeah, I know, but I used all the network of
global network.
Yes, all the urban network, but focused on just the very small area. After calculating the centrality, I clicked the study area.
So maybe
maybe like 1,000 meter, 1,000 and like 15-minute city extent
like
can give another type of perspective results. Because yes, as you say, it is a pedestrian analysis.
Maybe you
mainly,
can extract even more information by, for example, the integration or betweenness at 1.2 thousand meters. Since it can improve. I mean, it should be tested.
Yeah, it has a potential. It has a potential. Yes. Thank you for that.
Can we end now? Can we chair?
Yeah. Next presentation. It is kind of weird. Next presentation is crowdsourced data for urban planning, a critical evaluation of OpenStreetMap accuracy and completeness. Yes, Federico and Federica.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So, some of you were already in the last presentation. I mean, in the last session, I will try to not be that boring, trying to add things or changing some things. We are here, I mean, just to present, introduce ourselves. We are a researcher from the University of Pisa, Desktech Department with Professor Valerio Cutini. I am Federico Mara, Federica Deri, and Karen Selmi, and we developed this work on data. We were focusing before on this comparison between Google Maps and OpenStreetMap, and we are here instead focusing on OpenStreetMap. So the title is Crowdsourced Data for Urban Planning, a critical evaluation of OpenStreetMap accuracy and completeness. So the topic is into this project. We're working for in this project, the Evolutive Meshed Compact City, which is a project aimed at understanding where are the potentials for creating, developing 15-minute cities. This is the framework of the work, but more in general, the objective is to study suburban and peripheral areas, since in very dense cities, it's not something that we can work on within the logic of the 15-minute cities. I mean, the dense areas are already 15-minute cities, so we focused on the opportunity of suburban and peripheral areas. If by organizing them, if working on them, we can provide the essential services and somehow functionally organize these areas. This is to move towards this transition to more compact settlement forms, providing, as I was saying, the essential services. And an interesting question that I read before was about the opportunity to provide all the functions within a 15-minute city, but actually we should also categorize the functions to provide the basic needs, and then of course, for example, we cannot have in every neighborhood university or hospitals, so it's something that we have to do, like hierarchize the functions and create several radius of this city, this concentric city, if you want. We identify the main street as the vibrant public space, as catalysts of urban life, just for you to give a presentation. And we work with a lot of methods, but it's not interesting here. What's interesting is not work. Okay. You have to share the screen. Okay, sorry. So I'm just saying what's interesting here is the topic of data. So we are working with a data-driven model, this evolutive meshed compact city. Has to be quantitative and provides quantitative methods to evaluate the opportunity, the potential opportunity for a 15-minute city, and the techniques that we can implement in creating it. And so our question was, but can we actually rely on data? Are data actually useful? And if before we were just comparing these two types of datasets that are Google Maps and OpenStreetMap, here let's say we went into the field, into the topic, and we test if the
I'm sharing the brief page. Sorry.
Okay, we test if real data through a ground truth survey were correspondent to the data that we can find on OpenStreetMap. Okay.
No. Sorry for interrupting. It's sharing the brief page. I'm trying to.
Okay.
One moment,
No
please.
problem.
Can you fit in 10 minutes as well?
Okay.
Sorry for that.
No problem.
Maybe your desktop is extended and not duplicated, so you have to
Maybe.
do it from
I can with
this
do
desktop.
this. Okay. 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 Sorry.
Okay. So, working, but no. Yes. Need presentation, I guess. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it's not that important now, but just for you to understand is, as I was saying, a data-driven model to identify urban precondition for densification. So in the logic of understanding where the opportunity for a 15-minute city arises, we need to have data that we can rely on. So why do we need data to analyze existing urban configuration, the existing functions, to design and assess new development scenarios, and evaluate practical feasibility and impact of the urban interventions that we want to do, plan, and design. And so this was the question. So can we use this data as informative strata for decision support systems? And here we arrive to the two contributions that we did. As I was saying, we compared before OpenStreetMap and Google Maps, and we are here focusing on OpenStreetMap. To have a real understanding of the effectiveness on the reliability of this data, we work through a survey, real survey. Okay, so here we can go on. So in comparison to the previous session, we are now comparing ground truth datasets database with OpenStreetMap, and some words about the process that we use to create this dataset. We had 3 independent on-field surveys that done during this February, and we had a registration of the address, business name, and type of POEs based on the categories. Then we merged these 3 datasets if, like checking if they were coherent. And we had a manual specialization of each activity in QGIS. This was a long work, tough work, and in the end we succeeded in having these datasets to be compared to the OpenStreetMap dataset. We know that OpenStreetMap is a volunteer geographic information project. It's free, open, and is continuously edited by the users. It's not supervised. Is organized into primitive elements and tag values, as you know. And there is this term that can describe the work of OpenStreetMap, that is a user-generated system of classifying and organizing online content into different categories by the use of freely chosen keywords. And here we are at another topic, that is the importance of the categorization of the activities. And then we will go a little bit more into this. And it is not peer review. So we wanted to understand how can we rely on this data set, since we are working with other universities in other European countries. And so we need to understand, since it's open and it exists in these other countries, how can we, and if we can rely on this data set. So these are the methods, and now Federica, the floor is yours to continue with the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, this is the general framework of our methodology, and we are going to analyze every single step more in detail. The first issue of research was the selection of the amenities to analyze. So we focused on proximity-based services that are, and facilities that are considered essential for the implementation of the 15-minute city model, particularly referring to the commerce and entertainment categories developed by Moreno in 2021. We know that there is a lack of unified and widely accepted classification about the topic, and the topic is still debated in literature. So studies refer to the categorization developed by Papadopoulos Italian 2023, who grouped in different market categories the urban amenities associated in literature to the topic of 15-minute city. So we used in these studies these market categories as a basis for grouping OpenStreetMap activities by tag values. The case studies. We focus on two Italian municipalities in Tuscany that are Massa and Viareggio. They are both two of the test areas of the ERC2 project, and they are located in the Versilian area. In particular, Massa is in the northern part, while Viareggio in the southern sector. Here we can see that the municipality of Massa developed along a longitudinal axis that stretched from the Tyrrhenian Sea and up in Alps. And in the flat and hilly areas, there is a wide functional variety. On the other side, Viareggio follows a coastal parallel development to the Appian, but we can see also here a wide functional variety. So, as we explained, the study required a ground database that simply represents the actual situation. And so for this preliminary study, we focused on the historical centers of the Massa Viareggio, as you can see in this picture. So just to sum up, the construction of the database follows three different steps. At first, the collection of data, through surveys for the ground database, and using a OSM plugin in QGIS. Then we need to spatialize the result in QGIS, so the manual substitution, while for the database, this not required because it's a pre-geofenced database. And last step is the categorization of entries according to the Papadopoulos framework, as we showed before. After that, maybe the most workload part of the research was the manual comparison of the real database and the OSM dataset. We at first attribute a unique code to each real item in this form that you can see here. Subsequently, we based on spatial proximity and name correspondence, the same ID was assigned to matching entries in the OSM dataset. After that, an additional unique code was also assigned to each unmatched OSM report in this form. So here it was an R and here two R. This was the difference. And this unique ID system made it possible to assess the presence or the absence of OSM activities in the databases, and also to evaluate the nature of the error. Through an addition field, where we take these different parts. So replicated or moved for activities who present the same name but different locations compared to the real activities. Redundant for two or more entries with the same location and same name. Replaced or inconsistent for same location but different name. Seed where an activity or an OSM activity was near to a vacant building, because in the during the ground truth survey we also mapped the vacant buildings, and it tested the general one where there was no correspondence between the activity. The last step was the joint operation between the OpenStreetMap and the real-world vector layers, using the unique ID as the linking field. So we obtain this final general table. And here we can see all the results. This is obviously an extract, but to an example, we can see some real matched activities with OSM, some real unmatched activities, and also the unmatched OpenStreetMap entries that we can see there called is UR. These are the results for the biology case study. We can see the total number of real and OpenStreetMap items that we disaggregate for according to the macro categories of Papadopoulos. We define 3 different indexes that are amount, accuracy, and categorization accuracy, and now we can talk about them in an example. Here, retail services and trade, we can see that the OpenStreetMap has very low number of activities, so 16 against 348. So the amount is the ratio between these two values is 4.6, very low. But this value drops to 2.3% if we assess the accuracy. So the ratio between the OpenStreetMap extracted activities and real activities. We can also see that matched OpenStreetMap activities are all of these activities are correctly categorized because there is the categorization accuracy that is 100%. In this image, you can see the distribution of mismatch types across functional categories, and we can see that the most common mismatch types are incest and cis, but we can concentrate on 0 values that have different meaning, because, for example, for food and grocery stores, we can see that all of mismatch are 0. This means that all extracted OpenStreetMap entries were matched with real activities, so the mismatched field was empty. But keep in mind that this doesn't mean that the OpenStreetMap database for food and grocery stores is complete and accurate, because if we go back to this table, we can see that the accuracy was 12%. So this 12% is perfect, but what about the other 88%? Because the OpenStreetMap database missed it, so it's not complete. Here we can see the result for the master case study. The trend is very similar to the region, and we can, in general, in master, we recorded higher values for OpenStreetMap, but for example, this is an interesting case for the restaurants. We can see that the amount was more than 100%, so OpenStreetMap reported more activities than the real one. But between these 107%, just 44% compared to the real entries was effectively existing. And another index interesting is that not all of these OpenStreetMap activities were correctly categorized, because just the 75% was corresponding to the real activity. The same, also recreational areas are interesting because we can see that in both mass and diversity studies, they are well represented, because there's 100% of amount, 100% of accuracy, and 100% of categorization accuracy. This is also the image about mismatch types. In this case, we can see that the most frequent were excess and replaced or inconsistent. And this means that the OpenStreetMap entries didn't find correlation with the real activity, because the location was the same, but the name was different. So the name, the activity changed during time, or the name was registered with a different name between the OpenStreetMap database and during the field survey. And just to conclude, we understand that it's very important for, in particular for our project, to address the issue of big data, in particular OpenStreetMap. We assess a general shortage of OpenStreetMap data and also inaccuracies that are not evenly distributed between all different categories, but there are some difference between them in terms of both accuracy and amount. This means that the volunteer geographic information has some limitations, maybe correlated to his intrinsic discretional nature. And so not always the availability of a lot of data is synonymous with quality, so it's important to address this issue. Of course, the results couldn't be generalized. This is an exploratory research that needs future development, such as expanding the analysis by having different types of analysis, considering different type of case studies, and also comparing OSM datasets with other institutional or web database. We have already begun to explore this topic in greater depth, and here you can see some of the results that we are going to present during the International Conference on Innovation in Urban and Regional Planning. And in this paper, compared the OpenStreetMap dataset and the Google Maps dataset with the same ground truth database as a reference. And we also expanded the number of studies. We still talk about mass media, but we consider the historical area, the suburban area, and the local manufacturing area. Now, just quickly, we can see that we can see that it's quite clear the superiority of Google Maps instead of OpenStreetMap. But of course, if you are interested, we invite you to wait for the paper. And so, thank you very much for your attention.
For this work, to measure, to evaluate that quality has two stages, as you know, accuracy and completeness analysis, and you did them both. So thanks for this presentation. For these areas, you can compare side by side different data, but for a big data, for like country data, is more than worth to measure the trustworthiness. Yeah, it is like it's very good source for OpenStreetMap. We know that it's very good source for okay, not for maybe urban planning, but it's a good source for analyzing everything, especially. So very good presentation for this session. Do you have any? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
For the next yes. For the next presentation, Ms. Gülnena will present. We will present urban perception using large language models.
If I just go through, it's okay. It's just okay.
Sharing.
Right? So I didn't change anything.
Okay.
Hello everyone. For me. And today I'm going to present this topic, AI-driven perception mapping, comparing Gemini and Llama. Actually, my topic was extracting information from social media data. I did some content analysis in text part of the Twitter, and also I did some spatial analysis from activity data. But I changed a bit. I changed my domain a bit to urban value, urban perception, and I would like to understand how citizens live around the city, and I started to search about the urban theories about this, and I see a lot of needs, I see a lot of literature about it. I'm going to go through with this content, but I will try to be very quick. First, I will mention about urban perception literature, and then I will present urban perception training technologies very shortly. And I will mention narrative AI tools, urban perception relation. I will present a very small case study, and then I will give some discussions, present some discussions and conclusions. You can also join for that one. There, since 1960s, there are very different, not very different, but there are various theories how people perceive understand cities, and some of them are directly related with urban structure, urban building types, and some of them are related with the social background about the functionality of the streets. And some of them are saying it's about the human behavior and place identity as emerging partners. And also there's some interruption to the urban rules, like managing on the planning theories. And these are the second also mentioning about the perception literature. And Gestalt also mentioning about phases shaped by the principles of limited proximity, continuity, similarity, and simplicity. This is what we how we see and understand urban and environmental sides. And Lohan says about it's mostly related with our personal inner beings of ourselves. And the report also says about the emotional and spiritual preferences theory. And with one, she's also my friend, Teresa Argan. She also searched about how smartphones change our urban perception. So our perception really changing with the many different factors, not just building, not just the changing environment, but also social side of ourselves, also personality, and many things are there. And some studies how to perceive, how to understand human perception while we're walking around the city. The first one is the ambulatory assessments, capturing urban experience in real time. They mostly use this kind of resource, mostly use the smartphone libraries and also integrate some data sources, resources like remote sensing, logic, geographic information, social media data, and also noting some emotional responses by these smartphone e-diaries, and also taking the physical behavior data and giving some results how to perceive or understand or understand urban areas. And the second kind of research are mostly using the vocabulary data sets and mostly focusing on the some parts of the cities, like parks or I don't know, maybe hospital sites or school regions. And also they use some social media data to understand the emotional background of the what the place really impacting to people. And the last thing is the most wide and also the latest size of this kind of it's about perception-based mapping of urban environments with the few images. Like MIT Media Lab presents some kind of data sets like the Place Plus project, and there is another data sets, Place Plus 2 data sets, and also the last one has the CPU imageries as well. These imageries has the has models as well, rating the visuals, imageries, and also this score. These models gives the perception scores, how the image impacts the human well-being. And there are various AI tools in the latest years, recent years, and of course, generative AI is really rapidly developing in these last years, and there are some more than these studies. Of course, there are tremendous studies about that. But the thing that I would like to go here to talk is the multimodal data can be processed within AI. How we can really connect the large language models or generative AI with the perception studies, because generative AI can respond to many things, and also including the perception studies, can also have to contribute to that kind of studies. But is there any limitation, or of course there's many limitations, but how really it can respond to that kind of questions in this very early age of generative AI stuff. As I say, there are many perspectives and many criteria, many classifications of urban perceptions and perception scores. But we don't know much about how really generative AI responds to that question. So I carried out a study, and I selected just a small area in the city of Turkey, and my selection criteria is the center location, pedestrian-based design, and high data population density are my major selection criteria. And this area is the central part of the Ankara. Key characteristic is one of the key characteristics. Pedestrian height is surrounded by rows, mix of low to mid-rise buildings, and ground floors, first stores, covered and bars, upper floors primarily private offices and workplaces. And I use metadata data set. This is an open data set. We can directly download, use that kind of data set. And I get data through the API using the bounding query. And this is my boundary box, as you see in the video. And the initial query gives me return to more than 500 street level imagery within the district. And but as I went further with the social media data and crowdsourced data, there are many challenges with those data sets. Like variability, camera angles, and resolution, content and viewpoints, and presence of irrelevant, unusable images. So I carry out a manual filtering process, and my filtering is depending on the Depends on the image clarity, appropriate point of view, reasonable ground to sky ratio, and final step, it has 470 images retained. But at the end, I again sample the data, randomly the data to 100 because I don't want to assume my free access to generative AI. This is just a preliminary study. So I just sampled this 100 points on the boundary of the region that I have sampled before. So here my methodology, I use Gemini and Lava. Gemini is commercial product, as I said, and it gives us a small amount of free of usage. And Lava is an open platform, and this was working on the online. But this one is can be downloaded and used as a desktop program. So after downloading or setting up the generative AI model, then I use prompt engineering strategy, and I find two questions. The first one is which human perception aspects for urban we consider the aspect that makes me not to determine perception, concepts, and classification by myself by choosing one of the theoretician's background. This gave me directly choosing that question gave me directly understand how generative AI responds to the topic. And the second question is to analyze the image and provide a score from 1 to 10 for each aspect, and then 1 is the negative, 5 is neutral, and 10 is the positive in my class. And after that, I executed the workflow. Question 1 asks only to Gemini to identify relevant perception aspect. I did not ask this one to Lava because when I asked I did, but Lava returning the text content very widely, just can I say story, not very wording the criteria as a word or two words or something as an indicator that I can use. So I use the Gemini response for Lava as well, and the aspects returned to use as an input for the question in both Gemini and Lava. Both models are generated in CSV format, and then I also create some questions. These questions in other languages. The first one, as you see here, I ask in English, but also I use these questions in German and also Turkish. To understand if I respond language phrase or something, if they change the answer based on their language. Sorry. And here's the results. You see the comparison, Gemini and Lava. You see the green are the most positive and the dark purple is the most negative score. So when we compare the Gemini and Lava, we see Gemini returns more positive results, more positive, more also consistent results, but Lava responds negative results for the same areas, but also return some MA values. to the questions, some of the questions. And here you see each perception criteria that the both platform has responded. And also, I say before, I also utilize different language processing, and when I put German into my prompt and Turkish, it's changed the score, but not very differently. I mean, I say there's some consistency between these two languages, but again, I can say in English, it responds more quickly. I don't know why. I don't know why. I need to search on a bit more. I don't know why. But experience like that, I couldn't process this similar search on Lava. Lava did not return anything in German and also in Turkish. So my study focus was assessing the GenAI model's capabilities in determining urban perception using scale imageries. And model performance, I can say GenAI is better than the Lava, but limited free API, but Lava gives the free and suitable offline and local use. And opportunities are really because it enables urban perception, I think, and can integrate with other data sets also, environmental, social media, and mobility data. And also, it supports data-driven urban planning to improve both mobility, reliability, well-being, but it requires really developing and should be improved by maybe prompt engineering. There are current limitations, complex human-centered perception analysis, because we have other different cultural backgrounds, we have other different personalities, and so maybe agents should be developed and applied to that kind of research. And findings sensory data should be added to that kind of research, and maybe should be asked by prompt engineering to the GenAI classrooms. And I say this person. And I think the direction as well, the multimodal AI frameworks, integrate spatial temporal data, sensory use, demographic attributes, and improve language adaptability and cross-cultural interpretation to broaden global activity. Applicability. Thanks for listening to that part.
We go to all time, perfect time. Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
I was very great. I am very inspired to work for sure. Really cool. You know, just maybe just a simple question. I didn't forget how to do. So you first have 400 pictures, and you use one, then you identify 100.
Yes.
100. Then how did you every day you show the mouse, but how do you relate it to the space or to the comments, and how do you use all 100, you put all 100 in general?
Yes, I use
from
yes.
Then one after one.
Yes, I use the same imagery.
Yeah.
Point presents the imagery.
Yeah.
So I put the imagery to the command and Lava. Yeah, as question they turn to me. Maybe
and how okay, and how did you come to the math? Because how did you what was the how did you know when the Gemini is commenting or looking at when responding to the question? Because image and you ask a question. So if the building of the image is the park, with the tree, with the bird.
Yeah.
And how do you?
I just sampled in the processing, I mean, the manual filtering, I remove some of the data based on if it's just focusing on a building or an objective industry. I remove the data because I like to feel like we're involved in the industry. So I look at the blind side of the street. With the my super to make the image. Then
to isolate one object. Is that
not the object, the streets. I can say. And also there are some buildings, some shops, and other I don't know pedestrians there. Um, furnitures, big furnitures there. And I also actually asked other questions that is not here, but also return lava returns how score are working in background. And it says, for example, the building looks very old, or the streets looks very busy, or there are shops and other images are there. So I'm supporting like visual. I cannot also uh, uh, reading but the visual things that I didn't say. I'm supporting visual activities, for example, 6 or 10. Because of that, it returns also some description when it returns as thing. I believe it's the AI platforms doing some segmenting algorithms in the background and returning the results like in the text form.
Because of course this would be the next interesting thing would be like how are these two that you compare using the same algorithms or not, right?
Yes.
And then we're something with black box and gives us scores, like how does it arrive at scores? What does it look at?
Yeah.
100 images. Does it look like a percentage of the treatment area, or does it look at how old buildings are? Does it look into what is the evaluation criteria that the system is using? And also, I don't know how do you, the maps are here, how do you identify what is evaluated? Because I have a picture with the building evaluated, was the building area, was the street evaluated. What was taken into the consideration of this evaluation, right?
Yes, totally correct. As you see from here, you see there's a road, the whole samples data includes like that photos, images. I mean, then it's also, I mean, GenAI consider the green areas, streets, and I mean, the pedestrian pathways and buildings, and also it returns some description with the score. But I did not mention in this study because I don't. It's very consistent in the
Because it might be that when you put the first image could use one method, the other could use the other method.
Yes.
Because for example, when you put things in ChatGPT and I want to recreate this thing, it would be so stubborn. So I said, okay, here I'm putting an image of this alien. This is this, but sometimes it's so stubborn that it doesn't take that.
Right.
So it's it is possible that it would be in 100 pictures that we use, it would use a different algorithm.
Yeah.
Not even the same algorithm.
Maybe I ask for that while doing prompt engineering.
Yeah, probably the next really interesting step is to kind of associate this result, kind of understand what the system is really doing.
Yeah.
Not just, okay, here we have scores, how the scores actually generated, and were they always generated with the same method or not, or because if you have a building versus you have the vegetation, doesn't use the same algorithm, right?
I don't know.
That's so super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not a critique of the work, the inspiration of what can also be looked at and investigated. I love the presentation, very inspiring. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, there was some research about the color selection of the
colors.
Yeah, colors is very then if I put there some same screen with sunny
Yes, yes,
it
yes.
returns different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that is another set of experiments. So
Yeah.
let's say you go and take pictures on your own at different times, people in it, no people, different angles.
Yeah.
What would the scores be?
Actually, because the data set that I have to show and introduce. I'm planning to use these data sets to score by Gemma because it has different kinds of within the data set, so I can test the platforms as a benchmarking. Yeah, there are many things left.
I want to go more with you.
I will also.
Very interesting stuff. I want to do some more of this. By the way, Meyer decided it was a colleague of mine at university.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's sorry.
I have published under editorship. I'm following him about maybe 10 years.
We were sharing, we were in neighbor offices.
Great.
Thank you. It's a friend of mine. Okay, very cool. I have to get to the dinner.
Any questions?
Very good. I have to write down the next.
Thank you.
For
Thanks for joining us and thanks for everything. I encourage I also it will be really natural.
That would be really interesting.
This might like